welcome to the Yule Goodness broadcast of Ogma's Oratory. I'm Greyheart, and I'm here with my my co-host Rebekah. There we go. Put you out there so people can see you. All right. So as you may have noticed, we're doing a holiday themed show tonight. So it's a little weird because I have been working graveyards last week and this week, and so I actually literally got up a couple of hours ago. Normally this would be my day off, this would be my weekend, and I would have plenty of time to go through and change a bunch of stuff and add stuff, and today I went through furiously, and in less than an hour I came up with all the music that you just heard for the wait time, and all of the other stuff that was going on as far as let me fix this here real quick. Oh, drop that there. Oh, we're having fun with our. There we go. That's better. There we go. There we go. All right. So I had some buttons showing on you, Rebekah. So I had to change those. As I said, it's been an interesting evening because I have been sleeping all day after working all night, literally. And so, how's your December going, Rebekah?
Well, I've had a lot going on in December, but it hasn't been too bad. It's all been going in a generally upwards direction, and that's what I like to see. So,
yeah, upward is always good. It's basically they put me on third shift because our third shift operator he has MS, and a few weeks ago his MS was flaring, and so we had to take a couple of weeks off, and they decided that we needed to make sure that somebody was trained in on how to do his shift in case he couldn't come back. He is back, fortunately, which means I actually, after this week, get to go back to my regular shift. So I'll have Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday off. I absolutely hate this shift. I absolutely hate third shift. I literally don't know what day it is. The only reason that I made it here tonight is because I had a reminder on my phone saying, "Hey, tonight's the show. You need to be doing it." It's like, all right, fine, okay. So, Rebekah, any interesting Yule traditions that you do?
Well, here at the house, we do the traditional decoration of the Yule tree. We put up all of the ornaments and everything from all of the previous years. We all have our first Yule ornaments, and we have a special tree set aside for my boyfriend because he's a big Star Trek nerd, so we put Star Trek stuff all over that tree for him. But that's downstairs in a corner somewhere. We do like to observe the Yule log. We have a fireplace now. In years past, I've used just a piece of wood that has 3 holes drilled in the top, like a log with the 3 holes. It's pretty much what I could manage in an apartment. But this year I'm actually looking forward to using my fireplace, so that'll be pretty awesome. And then, of course, lots and lots of singing.
You know, it's interesting. I was having this discussion with my student on Monday night. I remember, this is going to surprise some people, at one point I was a Cub Scout. And I remember one year we made those little Yule logs with the 3 candles, and basically it was just a piece of pine that we cut the bottom off of and drilled 3 holes in, and put some green stuff around, which is fine enough. But my student and I were having this discussion Monday night in class, and I said, yeah, that's not a Yule log. That's 3 candles. That's I understand. Symbolically, okay, I get it. It could be, a Yule type of log, that sort of thing. And sorry, I was checking my sound.
Granted, it isn't the Yule log, but it really is the symbology of it that counts for people who can't have the Yule log in the fireplace burning for the full,
Well, and
week and
here's
a
the thing.
half.
You and I, before the show, you and I were talking about Yule logs, the actual Yule log. You want to describe what a Yule log actually looks like?
Okay, a Yule log is typically made out of ash, but pine and oak will also do. And it's probably a good foot and a half, 2 feet in diameter. I mean, Yule logs are pretty big.
Of course, they can't see your
And
hands because it's out of frame.
oh, okay. Well, picture my hands about 2 feet apart. Um, and the reason why it's so large is because when the Yule log it was lit for an entire night, and it would burn throughout the night, and then it would sit and smolder for 12 days. So if anybody's ever been to go camping and they've put in a log that's much too large for the fire to actually burn down, then they know that, part of the log will burn, but then it will kind of smolder and just have ashes, but most of the log will stay intact. It will smolder like that for 12 days, and then it was put out in a ritual, and then a piece of it was saved to relight the Yule log of the next year.
And that is something that I see I see missing. I think is missing from a lot of Yule celebrations. That the local pagans and most of the groups that I have been a part of are missing. Is that whole idea of continuity? We're celebrating the wheel of the year. We're celebrating the turning of the year. We're celebrating the yes. We're celebrating the return.
Sorry.
That wasn't mine, so it must have been yours.
It was mine. I'm sorry.
We're celebrating the change of the year and the continuity. And one of the things I've noticed, and I've been trying to work on ways to do this myself, and that is to bring continuity to the celebrations, not just year to year, but the different Sabbats within a year. So, for example, taking the maypole from Beltane, the wrapped maypole, taking it down and using that as the Yule log. So now you've got the fertility from April going into the rebirth of Yule.
Yes, I have actually seen that done quite often. Is they will actually part out the maypole from a ritual and give it to either members of the circle or coven members or whoever's there, and they will give it to them as a gift. And that's another important thing about the Yule log is it has to either be cut from your own yard or it has to be given as a gift. You can't buy a Yule log according to tradition.
Well, that makes sense. The whole idea being that we're talking about gifts, and this time of year is very much a whole very gift giving kind of season. And one of the things I wanted to talk about was some of the history behind this, because the history is fascinating in several ways. For one thing. And I hopefully I don't want to go off on a rant here, but as Dennis Miller used to say, the calendar that everybody uses, it's called a Gregorian calendar, and it's named after Pope Gregory the 13th. And the reason it's named after him is he's the one that came up with it. And on that calendar, it says next Wednesday, the 21st, is the beginning of winter. Well, okay, if you're looking at the season, not the calendar, what you notice is that actually next Wednesday is the middle of winter, because it is the solstice. It is the peak. It is the climax of the darkness of the night. It is the longest night. It is the climax. And so after that, the days started getting longer again, and the nights start getting shorter again. So it is the peak. And you don't tend to start things with the peak. The peak comes in the middle or sometimes at the end, but never at the beginning, at least not in anything I would enjoy. So I look at it, when I look at the calendar, I look at the seasons. And so winter actually began at Samhain. Samhain was the first day of winter. Samhain is also, in the Celtic culture, was the first day, that it was the new year. which makes a lot of sense since the Celts start their day at dusk. You would start your year at winter. Makes perfect sense. So that's just one of the things that old Pope Gregory did for us is he screwed up when the seasons start and when they end. So we're actually at the middle of winter, and especially if you look at the opposite solstice, which is Litha, the summer solstice, it's called midsummer. Well, how can it be midsummer and the start of summer at the same time? It can't. So it's the middle of summer, just as Yule is the middle of winter. So yeah, that's my rant.
Mm-hmm. And actually, bringing up Litha and Yule at the same time, that's actually something else we talked about before the show. Was there is a story out there about the Holly King and the Oak King, and they basically do battle with each other during the solstices. The Holly King is basically the ruler of winter and all things cold, and the Oak King is the Summer King, and he's the one that rules over, making the flowers bloom and making sure that the harvests come in and things like that. And so during the solstices, they will basically do battle with each other, and then the loser will lick their wounds while the other one is ruling over everything, and then they do it again, and then they switch places.
Well, and if you think about it, that that is the traditional battle between life and death. The Oak King being the king of life, and the Holly King being the king of death. And yes, a lot of people are familiar with the Oak King and the Holly King in the summer, because that's one of the traditional games of summer solstice is the tug of war between the Oak King and the Holly King. It's either a single person or it is teams of people who are competing in the tug of war. And of course, as much as you'd like to see the summer continue, you know that it can't. You know that the Holly King or his team is going to win. But that doesn't make the competition any less fun. But I've always looked at it as that struggle between life and death, and winter was one of those times that was difficult for people, because we look at winter as, okay, it's cold and flu season. A couple of centuries ago, it was the season of death. People died during the winter.
Yeah, they didn't have vaccines and medicines that we have nowadays, and the death rate was a lot higher. And it's actually funny that you mentioned death during that time of year, because one of the reasons why we use the pine tree, the evergreen, as the Yule tree is because it's a symbol of eternal life, because it doesn't die in the sense that other trees do. Now, granted, we know through science that it goes through a hibernation period and all of that, but it still remains green and is, for the most part, alive. And that's why they used that symbol, is because of it being an immortal tree.
Well, all right. So let's go back to the beginning. I promised history, so let's talk about a little bit of history. This Yule tree, the tree that is in your background, decorated and lighted and all that. Where does that come from?
Well, the research that I did brought it all the way back to the Norsemen.
Absolutely.
And the Norsemen believed that the sun was a rolling ball that would go back and forth. And so what they would do is they would decorate this tree that they believed had eternal life to it with candles and like little star patterns that looked like the sun, in order to encourage the sun to come back and warm the earth up again.
Right, and so yeah, they would light it up. They would kind of like the trees behind me. They would make it stand out, make it a beacon, if you will. And at some point, because the Norse were well known for traveling, both by sea and by land, they went a lot of places and met a lot of cultures. And one of those cultures was the Germanic tribes. And somewhere in there, and I don't know exactly where, the people at the Yule tree started to hang apples off of the branches of the tree. So you have this evergreen tree that has candles or lights of some sort on it, along with these apples. Well, why would you hang apples off of an evergreen tree? Well, the reason for that is because you're in the middle of winter, and while our apples are ripe at this point in the year, usually about November, I want to say, they are creating what amounts to a fruit tree where one didn't exist. And it becomes an act of sympathetic magic, because now you've got all these people who are paying attention and reverence to this tree with these apples hanging off of it. And they are basically telling the fruit trees, hey, through sympathetic magic, they're saying we are honoring this tree which has got fruit on it, and if you want us to pay this same attention to you fruit trees, you need to bring your fruit back. So it's a way of trying to get the fruit trees to start bearing fruit for the next season.
Mm-hmm. And in addition to that brought around the tradition of wassailing. Now, typically, most people know wassail as a drink. It is a hot mulled cider. You can also have an ale added to it to bring some more kick to it if you want. But it's actually very delicious. And they would take this hot cider and they would give them to people as they came to their doors, who would sing and bring gifts of apples and oranges that had cloves shoved into them. And inside of these baskets, they would have wheat stalks, which represented the harvest, which was dusted with flour, which was basically representing accomplishment, triumph, life, things like that. And then they would give out these apples and oranges in return for this drink, the wassail. And then another popular use for the wassail was to take it down to the orchards and actually splash it on the trees, encouraging them to bear fruit and come back and have a good harvest. They would also sprinkle flour and things like that. I forgot, the Yule log they would also sprinkle with flour occasionally.
Right.
And that was all in the hopes of bringing in a good harvest and making sure that things went well over the next year.
And that was something else that my student had brought up during class. We were, Monday's class was on Yule. Why not? Although it could have been next Monday. I decided to do it last Monday. And she was talking about the sprinkling of flour and the wassailing, which basically was not it was not going house to house singing. It was going tree to tree singing and splashing hot wassail on the trees, basically in a fertility rite. But
there are accounts of both.
Yes, both being trees and house to house.
Yes.
Yes.
Because when the children would go house to house, they would receive the wassail as a gift.
Right.
For going there and bringing the oranges and the apples, which I forgot to mention represent the sun. But yeah, that was a gift. Was the wassail drink.
Right, and from that is where we get the more modern form of caroling.
Yes. So there's two different types of wassailing that's out there. There's the one that's going from tree to tree, doing the fertility and the hoping for the good harvest, going out to the orchards and things. They would light bonfires in the orchards and bring them the light and the life and all of that. But there was also the going door to door. There were both accounts out there.
Right. Clayton brings up a good point. He said the sun is reborn on Yule. During the introduction of Christianity, they just changed the sun god, S-U-N, to the sun god, S-O-N, which is correct. And that goes back to, again, Pope Gregory, because if you read the Bible, it says that when Christ was born, the ewes were lambing in the fields. Well, they don't have children in the middle of winter. They have them in spring. And that's also why Mary and Joseph found a manger, is because it was spring. So originally, the Christian church celebrated Christ's birth in the spring. Also understand that before the Christian era, in the Roman era, in the pagan Roman era, they used the Julian calendar, which was named after Julius Caesar, as most things in later Rome were. The Julian calendar, the year begins with January, but it is placed later in the year. It's actually in Julian times, in pagan Roman times, January was actually where we would have April. Okay, and so yes.
I just wanted to add to that a little bit.
Yeah.
Witchfox actually has a fantastic article out there. It's called "You Call It Christmas, We Call It Yule," and it goes into Christ's birthday or winter solstice, and it talks about how December 25th was actually introduced in 354 AD by Rome as a result of the Christians wanting it to make it the SON God nativity thing versus the SUN day. Basically, they were converting it from Saturnalia into a more Christianized version of something that they could basically say, okay, yes, all you happy pagans out there, you can keep kind of what you believe in. Just come celebrate it in the church. We'll change a few words and everything will be cool and we can all worship together and we're just going to Christianize you without you realizing it. So that's
or thinking about it. Yeah, as if that was going to work. But yes, and that's exactly correct. And so what we get is this change from SUN to SON, and because the winter solstice, most every culture that you can think of has this idea that the sun is dying. It's getting weaker, at least weaker and weaker, because the night is taking over. And so at this point where it is at its weakest, this is the one point where it might actually die and never come back, and that would be a bad thing. So a lot of ritual and a lot of magic was put forth, in keeping the sun alive. When the last 3 years, I've had a traditional Yule ritual here at the house where we would stay the night. We would light a fire. I actually have I don't have it with me. I have a Fresnel lens that I bought that I would use to capture the sun's rays and put it into the fire, and then light the fire, and then we keep the fire going all night long. We keep the energy of the sun safe during the long night. And then just before dawn, I take the lens and we push the energy of the fire back out to the sun, and then go watch the sunrise to make sure that the sun was actually working, that it actually came back. But a couple of things. So we've got this Roman calendar where the beginning of the year, January, which is January is named after the Roman god Janus. Janus is the two-faced god. He has a face on both sides of his head, and he was the god of doorways and new beginnings. So it makes absolutely sense that he would be, that the month would be named, the first month of the year would be named after him. But the other thing that happens, and because this is in spring, you have to recognize that the reason that the year began in spring is because that's when the Roman legions were able to leave Rome and march north through the Alps and go conquer. So it was the beginning of the year. But when you were talking about Saturnalia a bit, and the Julian calendar was 13 months. Each month had 28 days, at least in the beginning, until Julius got greedy and decided he needed 3 more days, and July, which is named after Julius, then had 31 days because, well, he's the most powerful man in the world, and so therefore he can have a month with the most days. Then his nephew Augustus did the same thing with the month named after him, and so now we've got days. But where did they get these days? Well, if you take 13 and you 28 days, 13 months with 28 days in it, and you add them together, what you get is 360 days. So you get a year with 360 days, but we all know that the year is 365 days. So what happens to those 5 days? Well, that was Saturnalia. Those 5 days were literally, they were a time between the year. They were not part of the year. And so they were outside of time. Now, if you're a witch, you're familiar with this concept. When you cast circle, you're in a place that's not a place and a time that's not a time. So you're familiar with this concept. But the Romans took it to a whole new level because they had 5 entire days that were not inside of the year. They were not in time. They were not in time. They didn't count. And so it was 5 days of celebration. Now, Rebekah, you and I were talking before the show started. You were talking about some of the celebrations that they did for Saturnalia. And again, remember, this is in spring. This is before they moved January to the winter solstice.
Mm-hmm. They would do things like it was okay at that point in time for slaves to participate in games, which they normally couldn't participate in. They were allowed to gamble with things like coins and nuts. They were allowed to insult their masters, which typically was not allowed, without fear of reprisal. And everybody was considered on even keel. Nobody was higher or lower than anybody else. There is a conical hat, and I'm going to screw up the name, but I want to call it a pileus. And basically, it is a conical shaped hat. It looks very similar to the hat that you're wearing.
Yeah,
and
it's exactly where it comes from.
Yeah, they were typically given to slaves who had become freed. So they were freemen. They weren't citizens, but they were freemen. And on Saturnalia, everybody would wear one of these hats. All of the citizens, all of the freemen, all of the slaves, they would all be sporting these hats, showing that everybody was on even keel with each other, which was pretty cool. And they would have feasts together, and oftentimes you would find the masters serving the slaves. And something else that's really funny is I looked into the gift giving. I know you mentioned it earlier, but Saturnalia for gift giving, it was often gag gifts that were the best gifts. The
White elephant,
the masters would often give their slaves some sort of a small stipend to go out and be able to buy little gifts. They would get things like toothpicks, hats, maybe an axe, a ball, a pipe, or there's one of them. Here we go. Catullus received a book of bad poems by the worst poet of all time as a joke gift from a friend, and he loved it. He thought it was just the cat's meow.
Ode to a green lump of putty I found under my arm one midsummer morning by Uvan Kolufin.
Exactly.
and those who understand that will get it, and those who don't won't. But that's fine.
But then they would also have things like they would give away clay pots or little figurines or something.
Sure.
Just cheap little gifts. It wasn't necessarily the expense of the gift. It was the fact that you were giving a gift that was the big thing.
Yeah, well, and it makes sense, because these 5 days are they're outside the year, they're outside of time. They don't exist within normal time space structure, according to the Romans. It makes sense that there would be no hierarchy, there would be no masters and slaves, because time doesn't exist, and so it makes perfect sense. And
for a while there, they even had the King of Saturnalia.
Yes,
and that's very similar to like the Feast of Fools, how they would have the King of Fools. It was very similar to that. So if he said, hey, take this guy and drown him in cold water, they would have to do it.
Right.
Because he was technically the King of Saturnalia. And Nero, as a boy, actually played one of these kings of Saturnalia at one point. No surprise, but yeah.
Kind of scary. But but the whole thing is that because there are aside from the King of Saturnalia, there are no ranks, because it's outside of time. Anybody can be anything, and
correct.
And again, we always hear tales. And of course, everything unless you actually do some real research, everything you tend to hear about these ancient Roman celebrations is a very Christianized version, and of course we all know that Christianity won, so they wrote the history. So we hear about these orgies that happen in Saturnalia. Absolutely, it would be it would not be uncommon for the wife of a senator or Roman politician to be found in bed with one or more slaves, and perfectly okay because it was Saturnalia.
Yep, and occasionally there's not too many accounts of it, but occasionally there were even masks worn. Um, my guess would be it's to disguise who was who and who was actually of what station, and to kind of make it a little bit more even, because the stigma being, well, that's still a slave, versus, oh, I that person's in a mask, I have no idea who they are. So occasionally masks were worn during these festivities.
Absolutely.
Also, something to note is more private homes situations. They actually had a set of colored dress clothes that they would wear for the Saturnalia feasts.
Okay.
Because typically they wore the toga, but during the celebration, they were allowed to wear things that were a little bit more outlandish and weren't typically something you'd be spotted in public with.
Well, unless something you wouldn't be spotted in public with. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the modern equivalent would be wearing speedos or a tiny negligee out in public, which wouldn't be the norm, but because the time of year is out, because we're outside of the actual year, it's okay because again anything goes, and. Honestly, I wouldn't mind if that were to come back into favor myself. I think, especially in these times, we need a week where people just sort of let off steam. Nothing violent. Okay, I'm not advocating anything goes and you can go out and kill your boss. I'm saying,
yeah, we're not having a reaping.
No. But 5 days of relaxing and enjoying life, and as long as everybody involved is consenting, why not? I think honestly, a Saturnalia would, if it were common practice, would actually be a really good thing for society. It would relieve a whole lot of stress, especially the stress that we place on ourselves this time of year. Everybody thinks everything's got to be perfect. If we were to take basically the days between Christmas and New Year's and make that week Saturnalia, Monday through Friday, Saturnalia kind of thing, I think that it would relieve a lot of stress, and the next year would be a whole lot calmer than it usually is.
Well, I think the problem that we have with this time of year, and I know that I struggled with this myself for several years to the point where I wouldn't even put up decorations and I would tell everybody to just go the hell away, is that there's so much stress over you have to buy the kids all of the greatest toys and they have to wait underneath the tree for the whole month, and you have to go out on Black Friday and you have to cook the goose and you have to put up the decorations. It just becomes a headache. It's just a wild,
and that's the stresses of this time of year that I was talking about. Everybody expects, you have to have presents for everybody. You have to have the perfect dinner, because if you don't have the perfect dinner, you're not a good person. You're not a good housewife or provider or whatever. Yeah, absolutely.
When Black Friday comes around, I always tell all of my friends, they're like, oh yeah, are you going to go Black Friday shopping? My exact response to them every year so far has been, I do not participate in media-induced mass hysteria.
Yeah, yes, well, and it's funny. Was listening to some news reports, and apparently Black Friday is actually on the downswing. People are actually staying home and buying online.
And they're doing the Cyber Monday thing,
or they're not buying at all, and so what used and the term Black Friday comes from this is the one day where most stores were into the black for they were in the red all year long. This is where they actually went into the black and started to make a profit. So that was where Black Friday, the term Black Friday, originated, and it's apparently not happening quite as much as it did, because people are able to shop from home and miss out on all of the crowds and all of the fist fights over the the one last birdie and all that stuff.
Hmm.
But
Well, I mean, I know here at our house, we don't do the Black Friday thing at all. We don't. I refuse to leave the house on Black Friday. If you get me out the door, you're lucky.
well, I have to
Um,
work, so I haven't done Black Friday in 30 years because I always have to work the day after Thanksgiving. I guess that's a
yeah,
blessing.
I just don't do Black Friday at all. I refuse to participate in that. And as far as, the perfect holiday goes, yes, I put up a tree. Yes, I do my Yule log. Yes, we have a family day together. But as far as like the whole gift giving thing goes, I mean, if I do give gifts, it's usually throughout the year. If I see something that I think somebody will like, I pick it up and I give it to them. And it's just because I found something I thought they would like. If there is anything under my tree, it's typically little things like, my daughter asked for a yo-yo last month, so I wrapped it up and stuck it underneath the tree. I found that
Hmm.
at the dollar store.
Sure, sure.
I mean, I don't do like big, huge gifts specifically for Christmas. If my kid says, "Hey, mom, I really like a bike," well, okay, let's go down to Walmart, find your bike. I don't see why we have to
Right,
wait and do the whole family thing
right.
only that one day of the year. It can be throughout the year.
Well,
When
and
it comes to Yule for me and my family, it is just that. It is a time of relaxation. It's a
mhm.
time of winding down, taking a few days and just enjoying being together.
See, I
Watch a
can.
movie, light a fire, tell stories, tell jokes. My son is learning card tricks. He's going to do a bunch of those for Yule. It's a lot more relaxing than the crazy media holiday that's out there where everything has got to be Martha Stewart perfect. That drives me
See,
insane.
I consider myself kind of lucky. In one, I'm a male, and two, I'm a bachelor, and so family does not really expect a whole lot from me on Christmas. And honestly, most of my family is out of state. So my brother lives up a couple of blocks away. But and we've been known to go out and watch a movie on Christmas. But my parents are in Vegas. My sister's in Vegas. My other sister's down in the Springs, and they've all got their own families. So I don't really have to go anywhere or do anything for Christmas. And honestly, presents, unless I got a girlfriend, I usually don't bother because it's not that big of a deal for me. But let's go back and talk a little bit about that tree behind you. We talked about how the Norse started to decorate and light trees to at midwinter, and that the Germanic tribes took it up and added some apples. But most people assume that we have decorated a tree always, and that's not actually true. Especially considering that a good large portion of this country of America, and for that matter, Canada and Australia too, are based out of England. England didn't do any of that. England for centuries. In fact, in the Middle Ages, Christmas, you went to church in medieval times. The churches didn't have pews. You stood all day, and it was an all-day affair. And so you were in church all day for Christmas, standing there while the priest did whatever it was the priest was going to do, and there was no real celebration. It was, I've heard of it. I look more. I think of it more as a penance than a celebration. It wasn't actually until Queen Victoria was on the throne in England. She was married to Prince Albert, who was from Germany, and the Germans had always done their Christmas celebrations up big because, again, they got a lot of their traditions from the Norse and other cultures, and so they had what they called the Tannenbaum, and the Tannenbaum was a rough translation Christmas tree, and so Prince Albert was in the palace in London, and it was the Yule season, and he's feeling down because he missed all of the celebrations and all the fun times that he had as a child growing up in Bavaria. And so he talked to Queen Victoria and about, hey, why don't we do some of this stuff and teach our kids, some of these traditions that I was taught as a child. So he was the first one to cut down a tree, bring it inside, decorate it, light it, and call it a Christmas tree. And of
And they
course,
must have thought that guy was nuts.
well, no, actually, what happened is that because it's the Queen of England, she's the top of society. So at that at this time of year, she's the one who is hosting all the parties. She's the one who is people. Her house, her palace, Buckingham Palace, is where all of the people who are anybody who is anybody is going for is hoping for an invite. We want to be invited to the palace for Christmas, for Christmas parties, for Christmas celebrations, for Christmas feasts, whatever. And so all of the nobles from around England come in and gather for the various events going on that the Queen is hosting, and they all see this tree in the corner with the lights and the decorations, and they're all like, "That's fantastic! What a great idea!" So the next year they all start to do it, and so now you've got all of pretty much all of the nobility in England are now putting up trees at Yule and putting candles on them and decorating them, and it becomes it filters down the people who go to their houses, whether it's the servants or people on business or whatever, and now they all see these trees that around England that people are putting up for Christmas, and they thought, yeah, this is a great idea, because they had plenty of woods, and it's not like they weren't cutting down trees to keep the fire going in their house anyway. So they grab these evergreen trees, they cut them down, they put them in their house. Next thing you know, everybody all over England is cutting down trees at Christmas, at Yule, and they're decorating them, and they're putting them up, and of course, after the Yule season, they can then chop them up, take the limbs off, and burn them in the hearth, and use them to heat the house. And so because of course everybody in England is doing it, that was in at the end of the 19th century, everyone in America looked to England as the example, and so next thing you know, it's happening in America and in Canada and in Australia, although it's a little weird in Australia because it's the middle of summer, not the middle of winter, but they all picked up the same traditions. Basically, it came from the Norse through Germany because of a Bavarian prince married to a British monarch. And so Christmas trees as we know them weren't popular until the end of the 19th century. It isn't this thing that has been going on for centuries and centuries.
The other thing he brought with him was holly. They used to decorate their homes inside and out with holly. And the holly was actually harvested by druids who would go deep into the forest and harvest it to bring it back specifically for the Yule season. And so one of the other things that he probably would have brought with him was the decoration of holly. We oftentimes also see things like mistletoe hanging, and the whole kissing under the mistletoe thing. That actually didn't become a thing until 18th century, I want to say, the late 18th century. And that was likely to be both mistletoe or holly or gorse bush or whatever they could find in order to sneak a kiss underneath something. It was just referred to as like a kissing bush, and they would hang it up and you kiss underneath it. But that was like the late 18th century,
right? And again, that was during Victorian times, because in Victorian times, Victoria, Queen Victoria, especially as an older monarch, was very conservative, and so kissing in public was frowned upon. This gave people an excuse to be able to kiss someone that they thought was attractive in public. And it's interesting. I'm looking at the chat, and we've got several comments here about Christmas being mostly homemade, let's see. Cassandra's saying, found the year my family started drawing names, and foregoing the commercialized frenzy of our Yule became so much more enjoyable. And
exactly.
I know that my family, the adults anyway, always drew a name, and you just got a present for the person, whoever's name you got. You got the kids, of course, got presents from everybody because, well, you're kids. You expect a lot of presents. But it was interesting. I remember when the rule was it wasn't until you became a teenager. When you turned 13, you could draw a name. And I remember being 12 and being so upset because they wouldn't let me draw a name because I wanted to be one of the adults. And my parents are trying to convince me, yeah, but you'll get a lot more presents this way. I don't care. I just want to draw a name.
Yeah, we all want to sit at the grown-up table.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because I remember one year as kids, my dad. So we would gather on my maternal grandmother's house. Okay, so it was my mom and her sisters and my grandmother, and my dad got my uncle's name, so my aunt's husband, and my uncle at the time was managing restaurants for a living. That's what he did. And so every year for Christmas, he wanted white shoes. He wanted a check for white shoes. He didn't want you to buy the shoes. He wanted the money to buy the white shoes so that he would have something to wear at the restaurant. So we're out, and it's beginning of December. It's a week or so into December, and my dad. I don't remember why we were out, but it was me and my brother and my dad. We're out in the car, and we drive down to. It was down off Santa Fe. It's not there anymore, but it was the silos that had across the top, said Rio Grande. My dad worked for the Rio Grande Railroad, and this was one of the places where coal cars would dump coal for pickup by other companies that used coal in various ways. So he's going in there and he's talking, shows his badge to the people, and they're saying, "Hey, I'm looking for a lump of coal." And they look out the window and they see us sitting in the car, and they're like, "Oh man, you're not gonna do that to your kids, are you?" And he says, "Oh no, I'm doing this to my brother-in-law," and they just fell down laughing. It was funny because they're saying, "Yeah, lumps of coal, they don't do that anymore." At that point, this was the mid to late 70s. The biggest piece of coal you could get was yay big, because the smaller the chunks of coal, the more surface area, the better it burns, and you want an efficient burn when you're burning it for heat or for electricity or whatever. So they really didn't have lumps of coal. Now I have since. Let me see if I can peek behind the curtain here.
I give my kids coal every year, but it's like the black wrapped chocolates.
You guys didn't see that. I do have a lump of coal. This is what a lump of coal looks like. I did not get this for Yule. I will tell you that. It's not a Yule thing. But I have been known to threaten people with lumps of coal. I have been saying, here's what you get if you're bad. You're just smiling. You're not going to say anything.
That's a hefty lump of coal. Yeah.
It's what?
I said that's a hefty lump of coal.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a lump of coal. I mean, that was what you used for heating your house back in the day. Of course, my chroma screen is now screwed up. Let's see if I can fix that a little bit. All right, that's close enough. Now I got it on this side. All right, I'm going to fix my chroma screen. Hold on a second. I'm going to go back over to you while I fix my chroma screen, okay?
Okay. I found a couple of years ago that the stores were carrying these awesome little chocolates. They're about yay so big. And they're covered in like a black wrapper, and they've got like chocolate or crispy chocolate inside of them, and it's like a little bag of them. So I give those out to my kids every single year, saying, "Yeah, here's your bag of tokens for being really good, and here's your bag of coal for being little shits all year."
Of course, now we're having problems hearing you because your microphone's doing weird things again. I don't know what it is.
All
right, I fixed my green screen. Now you can't see the gap there. Let's see here. Let's see. So I'm looking at the chat. Cassandra's saying her children still make gifts for the elders, and as such, our Yule tree has become a wonderful scrapbook of sorts, as many of the gifts have been ornaments over the years. Yeah, so many memories.
Very much like that. We have everybody's first Yule ornament on there, and we have all of the ornaments that we've gotten over the year. We still haven't picked this year's ornament for the family. We're trying to figure out which ornaments we all want to do. Everybody's like, oh, we should do a theme. Well, we should do dolphins. Well, we should do bears. And I'm like, we just pick a couple ornaments, please, and shove them on the tree.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on with your microphone, but it's doing that weird thing again. You're gurgling. But
how's that?
That's better.
Unplug and plug in my headphones.
Oh well, yeah, kind of better, kind of sort of better. I don't know. Yeah, I'll grab it for a bit. So my family, we never did much of the we. As kids, at school, we'd make ornaments. And, certainly during elementary school, it was like an annual event. Everybody made the same kind of ornament. And there was Cub Scouts and the same thing. And so, we would have those ornaments hanging off the tree. We really didn't do homemade ornaments as such, at least not as a scrapbook as such. I like the idea of Cassandra's scrapbook tree, where you've got ornaments that are from different years and different the memories from those years, each of those years. I went to, because I'm working graveyard. I had Saturday and Sunday off, so I ended up going to an annual party some friends of mine throw. The Doctors Gunderson, they throw their annual Bah Humbug party, and the way they talk about how they started, and it's been going on for over 30 years. Although being scientists, they have to have everything documented, and the farthest back they can actually document is they've got an ornament that was dated 1987. Wow. But the idea behind this party is that Louise Gunderson told her husband Jim one year she was having a rough time at Christmas. She says nobody has these Christmases as bad as I do. And at which point Jim said, "You want to bet?" And Louise lost. Jim's Christmas was much worse, and they decided, well, let's make a party out of this, invite all of our friends, and we can all commiserate together. So the idea is that you get together, you have this wonderful party, and then at various times throughout the night, you go up. There's a chalice and something to ring it with. You're actually using a Sharpie, and you'll go up and you'll ring the glass to get staying in front of the hearth. You'll ring the glass to get everybody's attention, and then you tell your Christmas story. How horrible it was, and these have to be true stories. These are not made up. And then you take a standard ornament. They've got a bucket with some rocks in the bottom, and you toss the ornament into the bucket with the rocks. And the idea is to break the ornament in such a way that most of it is left, but it is missing pieces. Those are the really interesting ornaments. Though the problem is that when you are having a bad Christmas, especially if it's this year or the current year, you tend to throw the ornament with enough force that it just shatters, and all you are left with is the little hangy piece and some shards off the end, which is difficult to date and really doesn't look all that good. But if you do it right, you end up with these wonderful spherical pieces of art, and of course you write your name in it with the date, the year, so that people can later on will know what year it happened. This year we actually crowned a Lifetime Achievement Award because one of our friends 10 years ago, his wife passed away of cancer right about Christmas. This year his house burned down. And he's had several problems in between where Christmas is just not a good time for him. and so
Oh, wow.
we basically crowned him as the lifetime achievement award, and yeah. Yeah. So we're missing the top of your head. Your chair is up high enough that it's above the front.
Oh wait, that's because I adjusted my camera to try
Oh,
to
okay.
face
There
the
we go.
microphone.
Yeah, there you are.
Can you
Now
hear me any better?
now I can see you. Okay, that's better. It looked really weird on camera because they're not seeing. I can see her with her chroma screen, and I could see what was going on. All you guys could see was the top of her head was cut off. Um, so Aileen's saying that her family is so large that they only draw for the kids, which is interesting. I suppose that makes a lot of sense. If you've got a large family, especially if you're not independently wealthy, buying presents for all the kids could be really expensive.
Yes, yes, indeed.
I have played dad for a few years here and there with various girlfriends, and yeah, we spent a whole lot of money on kids, and we also spent a lot of money on each other. But we also both had good paying jobs, so we could do so. But it was usually one or two kids. It wasn't an entire passel of kids. So
Well, I have four.
you by yourself have four.
Yes.
That seems extensive.
I wanted six, but for medical reasons, I had to stop.
Oh, okay.
I come from a big family. It's always been a big family. We just, yeah. We're fertile myrtles. We just don't even control it. We look at a guy and we get pregnant. That's just how it happens.
Wait a second. How many times have you looked at me? How many times have we seen each other? None of them are mine, right?
No, none of them are yours.
Okay,
No,
good.
no.
Okay, good. Because we're looking at, well, you can't see me because of the way that the broadcast works. I can see you, but you could see me earlier before we started. Actually, you can see me if you look at the YouTube feed. So yeah, no, yeah, the whole looking and getting pregnant thing. No, none of that. Oh man! So, wow, do you believe our hour is almost up?
Oh my gosh, it almost is.
Yeah.
No, it's yeah, I get tied to the maypole regularly for that reason.
Wait. Well, I've never been there when you've been tied to the maypole. It's probably a good thing.
Well, one of them I was 8 months pregnant, and it was my very first Beltane, and I had never been to a public ritual before, and they
this was a public ritual.
Maypole.
Even better.
They tied me to the maypole with like two other women and a guy, and I actually received a really beautiful gift during that whole thing. I didn't even realize I was going to be tied to the maypole.
Of course you didn't.
They just kind of grabbed me and threw me up against it, and they were like, "Oh yeah, you're totally in this." I was
Yeah.
like, what? They're like, "Yeah, you are the reigning symbol of fertility. Get on the pole."
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
That's how it happened.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It makes perfect sense. And of course, being your first public ritual, you wouldn't have had any idea that somebody might even think about that. But yes, that makes perfect sense. Absolutely. I have because my birthday is Beltane. I have been a living maypole. That was an interesting time.
Oh wow.
Yeah, wrapped in ribbon. Yeah. And less said about that, the better. It was fun. I had a good time. We all had a really good time, and I will leave it at that. Yule, like I said, we normally for the past 3 years we have done what has become the traditional Yule ritual, which is lighting the fire. I've got the portable fireplace out back, and a big backyard, and I usually go out and usually I ask people to bring if they want to bring something to Yule, I ask them to bring wood so we can burn it, and it goes all night long. It goes literally from sunset to dawn, and we will serve dinner. We tell people if they want to bring some sides or some desserts, that's great, but we provide dinner. And it's usually stew, although last year my brother's girlfriend had tomato plants, and so she had way more tomatoes than she knew what to do with. So she gave me, I don't know, a half a dozen big grocery bags full of tomatoes. And so before the end of summer, before they became too ripe, my student last year and I spent an evening skinning tomatoes and putting them in the freezer. And I made homemade spaghetti sauce, and we had spaghetti last year for Yule. And but usually it's stew. And we're not doing it this year because my cook has been sick. He has diabetes and type 2 diabetes, I believe, and several other issues going on. And he has been in and out of the hospital. And so I called off Yule because I didn't want to put any more stress on him, because he usually cooks the dinner, and then he also has been responsible for the southern breakfast that we do after. Most of us go marching up to the hill to watch the sunrise over Denver, because I'm northwest of Denver, the city, downtown Denver, and then when we come back, we would have a southern breakfast, which was biscuits and gravy and ham and sausage and all that goodness, all the stuff that's bad for you. And we would have this big, huge breakfast in the morning, and so unfortunately because of his illnesses, he hasn't been able to do a lot of the stuff this year, and so I had to call it off because I didn't want to do it without him, because he is a hell of a cook, and he enjoys it too. And usually it ended up just being a few of us who would actually spend all night. The first year I had 20 or 30 people here, which is interesting because my house isn't built for 20 or 30 people, but quite a few of them spent a good portion of the night, but only a few of us actually spent the entire night. And with enough people, it makes tending the fire not a bad thing, because you can stand out, you can take shifts of half an hour at a time. And I always want to have two people out there at the fire at any given time, so you get somebody to talk to while you're tending the fire, because it can be rather boring when you're out there, especially in the middle of the night in a blizzard, which the first year wasn't really a blizzard, but it did get down to, I want to say it was -2, which was a good incentive for keeping the fire going, because the fire kept you warm. It was so cold that first year when we walked up the hill to watch the sunrise. We at dawn we had a freezing fog. I have to be careful how I say that. Freezing fog. Chris and Kelly tell me they saw the sunrise. I did not see the sunrise. I saw it gradually get brighter. But by the time we got back down the hill to my house for breakfast, my entire beard, it wasn't quite as white as it is now. But when we got back to my house, it was this white, because it was all covered in ice and snow, just from the fog condensing on the beard. So I have a good time. What I do is we do the ritual, and then we come in. I usually have the tree up and the lights around the tree, and then I tell people to bring decorations, and we decorate the Yule tree, and then we pass out gifts. What we do is what we call a Chinese a gift exchange, where everybody brings gift, and you don't put a name on it. You put all the gifts on a table, and we take numbers and pull numbers out of a hat, and the person who has number 1 goes and picks a gift. They open it and show it to everybody, and number 2 can then either pick something off the table and open it, or they can steal what number 1 has. And a gift can be stolen up to 3 times. After the third steal, it's taken out of play, and the person who stole it the third time gets to keep it. And that's always a lot of fun.
Yeah, my roller derby team does that for their Christmas party every year. Unfortunately, 90% of the gifts are bottles of wine or alcohol of some.
What do you mean, unfortunately?
My drinking team has a roller derby problem. That's how I put it.
Okay, I think I heard that.
Your drinking team has a roller derby.
Yeah. Your mic is still giving us problems. Let's see. Which customer we got? When you're
now.
That sounds better.
Yeah, what I said was my drinking team.
Well, for a second anyway. We're just having all sorts of fun with this microphone. I'm going to have to buy you a new microphone, aren't I? So let's see here. Yeah,
Is that my Yule gift? I love that.
yeah. I think I'm gonna have to buy you a new mic. So yeah, hey, Sam's on. Hi, Sam. Not really a white elephant. It's because white elephant I tend to look at as gag gifts, although there are those as well. I look at it as well. The first year I had gone to Europe that summer, and I had bought a mask in Venice for a lady who I was dating at the time. Well, we broke up very quickly after I got back from Europe, and so I never it didn't get here. It didn't, because I had it shipped. It didn't get here while we were still together, so I ended up with this mask, and so I wrapped it and gave it as one of the gifts for the Yule exchange, and it absolutely was stolen quickly, very quickly, 3 times. But it was a floral mask and done up in winter colors and made out of leather. It was a really nice mask. It was like 40 euros. It cost me 40 euros to buy it and another 40 euros to ship it back home. So we're talking a relatively expensive gift, but it really was a lot of fun and people had a great time. Let's see here. Because I was saying one year we had a little money and my mother bought some yarn and a crochet hook and taught me to crochet. One of my fondest memories above any toy I ever received. Yeah, spending time with family and learning from parents or grandparents or aunts and uncles. Absolutely. One of the things that this time of year is absolutely noted for is, back in the Middle Ages, you really didn't have any way to get out because, if it was cold and snowy, as it was in Europe, you may be in your house for a month or more. And so, yeah, learning how to do stuff like make valuable items for the house, crocheting a shawl or knitting a blanket or any of that stuff. Absolutely.
The other thing that I've seen is one of the things I've started doing for the kids for their birthdays is I've told them, we can't we can do all the toys you want. Or, you could take the toy that you would normally just set down after a month or two and put it aside and have an experience instead. So, like, one year for my son Adam, I took him up to a skydiving tube where he could do indoor skydiving, and he got to have an experience of indoor skydiving rather than just some cheap toy that he was going to probably toss aside in a month.
Well, I would take indoor skydiving.
Indoor skydiving.
Yeah, I would do that out in an instant. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It's interesting that the chat is like, yeah, we called it always called it a nasty grab. The idea of stealing presents. We always call it a Chinese gift exchange. I don't know why. I suppose technically that's biased, but
But we have a lot of those. We have the Chinese gift exchange. We have the giver. We have all kinds of different things like that. They're all nasty and racist, and we all use them. And
yeah.
It's a cultural norm for us that really shouldn't be a cultural norm.
Well, and it's interesting because if you live in Denver, if you're out on Christmas Day and you're anywhere near Federal and Alameda, all those shops are open on Christmas Day because they're all Chinese and Vietnamese, and they don't celebrate Christmas. It's not a holiday for them, so they're all open. It was funny. We went to Pagan Night Out last night. It was probably because the time of year. It was a light turnout, but we were down at Yaffa's, and Yaffa is she's Jewish. She's from Israel, and she was talking about the fact that she's going to be open Christmas Day because she's Jewish. They don't celebrate Christmas; they celebrate Hanukkah. So she's open for the Jewish community, if nobody else. And if you want a really good dinner and you're not doing Christmas with the family, contact me. I'll give you Yafa's address because, oh my God, Mediterranean dining. Oh, her Euro plate is just literally to die for. Fantastic food and absolutely
Actually,
authentic.
that's actually a Yule tradition that we kind of have. It's not really a Yule tradition, but we always order Chinese for lunch.
Chinese for lunch.
Yeah, because I mean, we're cooking a big dinner for everybody who's coming over, but
See, we don't usually have lunch for Christmas. Yeah, we do. Let's see, if it's between breakfast and lunch, it's called brunch. So if it's between lunch and dinner, it's dinner.
Actually, it's breakfast, brunch, lunch in a sack, dinner is served at the noon meal, and supper is the evening meal.
Oh,
That's the qualities of etiquette.
pardon the sneeze.
So if
Okay.
you want to get technical, that's what it is.
Okay, works for me. All right. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I know you. I figured you were probably working. You're one of the people who's regular at Pino. We're trying to figure out what's keeping people from coming. I think we're going to do some questionnaires to see if we can get more people to show up. But we have gone well over our time. This has been a really good show. I thought it might be. We actually, a lot of history, a lot of things to share. One other thing I want to do, let me see if I can pull it up here, is
Like Cassandra's thing with the apples and oranges. That's really cool.
yes. Let me move over here to, where is it? There it is. I'm gonna bring up on the screen here. This is the NORAD site. Let me put the overlay on it. Oh, it's on. Of course, I've got it on the I've got it on the same level. Hold on, let me move this around. There we go, and there we go. So here it is. This is the website for tracking Santa. It's noradsanta.org. If you've got kids, or even if you don't, I've been known to bring it up on Christmas Eve just because. And there's a countdown clock, 9 days, 3 hours, 48 minutes, and 6 seconds as of now. And it allows you to, let's see if I can, well, let me do this. There we go. Let's go. And it plays music. I've got the music muted at this point, but it gives you a whole bunch of a whole bunch of things you can do. And at one point, when they start tracking him, he'll track him all across the globe, and it can be a lot of fun, especially if you've got kids. I remember when I was a kid, they would do it on the radio. They didn't have, when I was a kid, they didn't have the internet. I'm old, but they would break into listening to just regular rock stations. They'd break in, and when they do their commercials, and they say, okay, so NORAD has Santa running across Europe at this point. So yeah.
And in addition to this, there's a book that I was telling heard about before we got on the show. It's called The Year Santa Got Lost, or How NORAD Saved Christmas.
Oh yeah, yeah. How NORAD saved Christmas.
NORAD was doing its normal Santa tracker thing, and then all of a sudden the flip appeared, and they went hunting for Santa, and they found him, and his NORAD had to use all of the U.S. military forces to deliver all the presents and everything. Really cute book. I highly recommend it to go along with the Santa tracker, so that the kids know that no matter what, Santa is safe.
Absolutely. Yeah, like I said, even if you don't have any kids, it can be a fun thing to do. Just you put it up in the background and see what happens. Absolutely. All right, so I think we ought to call this a show. I'm going to go ahead and leave the website up as we move to a closing, and you guys have a wonderful Yule. Some of you I may see before next Wednesday. Some of you I may not. But we'll leave you with a little bit of music, and we'll see you here again next month. I'm going to see if I can't put together some prizes so that the people who are listening live can actually win some stuff. But we will see you all. Everyone have a happy Yule.
Everybody.